Well, welcome everybody. It's 11:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see more folks joining, which is great to see everybody. We have some new folks here and some returning folks. Welcome to the May meeting of the Inland Coalition on Aging. My name is Dr. Ben Jauregui, and I am the founding board chair, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. I want to welcome you again. Feel free, if this is your first time, feel free to drop a note in the chat and let us know who you are. If you're returning, you can also please let us know that you're here. We welcome everybody. And we're going to start with some reminders from our last meeting. Every meeting is so powerful. Every meeting is builds on each other. And so we always like to recap the last meeting. So I'm going to recap a little bit about our last meeting. If we could go to the next slide, some key points from our last meeting. Again, my name is Ben Jauregui, ICA chair. Next slide. So we had Ernie. Ernie, great presentation. We had some great feedback and great discussions last time. Ernie regularly, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, he's the Deputy Director of Riverside Legal Aid. Very insightful, very timely. We discussed the legal issues that older adults face in housing and health care. He touched on some common ways that seniors lose their housing, for example, loss of a spouse or a partner, the transfers of ownership, the sale of the home. He touched on senior scams, romantic scams, fake bank emails, etc. He also talked about other issues about facilities and hospitals, how folks are discharged sometimes unsafely, hospitals failing to provide the adequate care or discharge. And also he touched on illegal evictions and overcrowding in RCFE. Very important topics that are aligned with our Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. So thank you again, Ernie, for sharing your expertise with us. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass it over to our ICA treasurer, Carmen Estrada, who's going to give you some updates on our Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. Carmen?
All right. Thank you, Ben. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see everyone again for our monthly meeting. Just some updates. The last meeting I mentioned we were going to be participating in Advocacy Day on May 7th. We met with several legislators. Here's a list of them. And we really focused on trying to help them support enhancement of long-term services and support services, and then also object to the cuts that are being proposed to Medi-Cal, which we know we've been hearing a lot about. There's still a lot of advocacy to be done. We will still be sending out emails asking for you all to call legislators and call individuals that may be interested in advocating as well. Like I said, there's a lot going on right now, and we really need to work together to make the voices heard because, as you know, a lot of what's being proposed in the cuts is going to affect our older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers. So here are the list of legislators that we have met with. We hope to meet with more. I want to thank the team that met with us. Next slide, please. Our Advocacy Day participants, I want to thank Janelli, Elizabeth, Gloria Sanchez, Elaine Levin, Nancy Stevens, Dakota Brown, Hazel Lambert, and Jennifer O'Farrell, which are Inland Coalition on Aging members. They all participated in the legislative meetings. And so I want to thank all of them for helping us speak with the legislators and discuss the topics that we want their support on. Hopefully we can do more of this. And if you're interested in joining us in further advocacy efforts, please send us an email at info@inlandaging.org. Next slide, please. Other updates. We sent out an annual survey to all of you, and it's to gather demographic information on our membership. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can see if there are gaps, things that we need to work on. It also asks you questions about how we're doing, if you'd like to see other things in our monthly meetings. So if you haven't filled out the survey, please fill it out. We will be sending it out again. Also, we are preparing for our June 24th launch of our Inland Empire Master Plan on Aging. The plan has been completed. We've gathered a lot of different partners to help us implement the plan. The event or the plan will be launched on June 24th. It is going to be a virtual launch. We will be sending out that invite later today. As a result, we will not have an ICA meeting on that day. Usually we would have our ICA meeting June 24th. Instead, we were going to do the virtual launch. We will also be sending out an email requesting short videos from those who have supported our efforts so that we can kind of show how many individuals are going to be helping us implement this plan. And so we're really excited to have this come together. We've been working on this plan now for close to 3 years, and we finally get to share it with everyone. So please stay tuned and registered for the virtual launch. We're going to continue to do outreach about the launch to the community. Um, uh, Dr. Harugi presented at the City of Riverside Commission on Aging on May 19th. They've also expressed support of our plan. And we're continuing to do our community awareness live streams. We had one earlier today. If you missed it and would like to view it, you can visit our YouTube channel. You can visit the YouTube channel and also view any other of our live streams that we've had. That's all for my updates. Oh, lastly, help us spread the word. Like I said, we are going to continue to do more advocacy. And so if you do see an email from us asking you to call your legislators or try to gather stories, please help us out. Again, there's still a lot to be done with everything that is going on, and we need to make sure that we work together. I'll turn it over back to Ben to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Carmen. Appreciate it. Very exciting news. As Carmen said, we are ready to launch the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. So please join us on that day to learn about all that we have done together, collectively done to develop an Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. This is a landmark, first of its kind, master plan for aging for the Inland Empire. We've gotten great support from you, the coalition, from community members, elected officials, from the Board of Supervisors. We received letters of support from the Board of Supervisors, both counties, and so we are all on board with this master plan for aging. So please join us for that day. We have some exciting things planned for that presentation, some guest speakers, exciting things. So please look out for that email, and we hope to see you there. Now we're going to turn it over to Saige Downs. She's the clinical director at Inland Caregiver Resource Center with a great presentation on seniors and behavioral wellness. Saige.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that introduction. And I am also very much looking forward to that presentation next month, too. I've been hearing about the plan for a long time. Nice to see it finally coming to fruition. And okay, so everyone give me a moment to share my screen. So just be patient with some of the technical errors. Sometimes I'm tech savvy, but sometimes I am not. Okay, so I know that Ben gave me a great introduction, but I just want to explain who I am a little bit more. So my name is Saige Downs. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been with Inland Caregiver Resource Center for 9 years. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. And so not only do I work with the Inland Caregiver Resource Center, I am also a clinical therapist with a agency called Cognitive Care Solution, which provides services for therapy for seniors and for individuals who have mild cognitive impairment. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, guess what? May is an incredibly important month because it highlights Older Americans Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. But why are we focusing on both? The purpose of focusing on both is to honor celebrate the celebration of Older Americans and Mental Health Awareness Month. And especially when we see them as two different issues. And notice I keep saying and. But are we actually taking a look at mental health with seniors? Are we combining them? That's why it's important to have this conversation today in this presentation. It's incredibly critical for us to talk about this. So, you guys probably noticed that when Ben was doing the introduction, that he wasn't saying mental health awareness. So something that I actually use, and so does Inland Caregiver Resource Center, is that we actually try to avoid using the phrase of mental health because that can be very stigmatizing. So, so for this presentation, to help with the destigmatization, we will be using behavioral wellness instead of mental health. So, because sometimes when we use the mental health, seniors especially may have that stigma of, oh, mental illness, that means I'm sick. I have to go to the doctor. So they're not as open into seeking that help. But we will also be discussing some of the other stigmas that can be associated with this term mental health. But for the remainder of this presentation, I will be using behavioral wellness. So, why does Older Americans Month matter? Right? So, it was actually created in 1963 to honor the growing population of older Americans. So, something that we have heard time and time and again that the aging population is one of the largest growing communities, right? But in 1963, this recognition was created to celebrate lifelong contributions in the communities, families, and in the workforce, especially with the older adults. Older Americans Month also focuses on encouraging the active aging, inclusion, and support system for seniors. And who's in charge of the theme for Older Americans Month? So for the Administration for Community Living, which is also known as the ACL, where they actually have the theme for the 2025 called Flip the Script. And what does it mean by flipping the script? So it it is focusing on how society perceives, talks about, and approaches aging, right? Because we want to make sure we understand the misconceptions, the stereotypes. We want to dispel these challenges that our communities are experiencing, especially with behavioral health, along with aging. So, how can we flip this switch, right? Especially for all the members that I was seeing in the chat, that there's many folks from Department of Aging for both San Bernardino and Riverside County, and lots of other agencies. So let's go over some of the topics that I'll be going over today. We'll actually be talking about behavioral wellness in older adults, what that actually looks like. Next, we'll be focusing on the common challenges. Then, we'll be focusing on how to support behavioral health. And lastly, our role as professionals in the community. So to understand behavioral wellness in older adults, so we actually need to understand what that actually looks like, right? Because we have all of these assumptions that come into our mind. And we also I would encourage for us to really think about as behavioral health as being just as important as physical health, regardless of age. But it's incredibly important in aging individuals because of the stigma that's associated with that. Because a really interesting statistic is that about 1 in 5 adults over the age of 60 experience behavioral health issues, such as anxiety, depression, dementia, and they also experience loneliness and isolation. This is a really big common thing that we hear, at least what I hear as a clinical director within Inland Caregiver Resource Center. So before we go into understanding more about behavioral wellness, I would like to show everybody this little clip that I found. So that way we can understand what these stereotypes could be. Okay, so if people would just want to put in chat really quick, or you want to unmute yourself, what did you guys think about that clip? Right? Who doesn't like SNL, right?
That was hilarious.
Right.
I love the sense of humor added to that. That was really funny.
Hmm. Right, right. Because the other thing too is that this is a great example of how we perceive older adults, right? And especially when we're talking about the common challenges that we'll be focusing on, we can look back at this video too, because this is something that is so ingrained into us every day, right? Okay, so I'll be going over some of the common challenges. So there's unfortunately a long list of challenges that individuals experience on a day-to-day life. And so I'll be going over stigma, loss, chronic illness, and isolation. Okay. And of course, my mouse just stopped working, so give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, so first we'll talk about the stigma, right? If we just look at the generational views, right? The video clip that we just watched, where it was just focusing on having to give Alexa a number of different names because they're not used to hearing the Alexa name. They're used to hearing older versions of the name, right? And something else with generational views too is something that's very, very different with today's generation than even baby boomers or Generation X is that the younger generations are very comfortable talking about mental health, right? Or also known as behavioral health, experiencing, symptoms of depression, anxiety, loneliness. This is something that is more openly talked about. This is not something that was as talked about with our older generations, right? Because of many different reasons. Maybe there's that point of view of the expectation of I can do everything myself, or not wanting to let other people know with what's going on, right? Then there's also the cultural aspect, right? So there are some cultures where sometimes it is not okay to talk to somebody outside of your cultural circle, and seeking help is seen as a weakness, right? And that also ties in with religious or spiritual views, where sometimes it can be um very much into I only share within my circle, or I only share with maybe the pastor or priest, or somebody that is of leadership within their spirituality, right? Talking with our spouse, with our friends, or other individuals that we are close to, we may not want to share with them because it's something that we don't want to place a burden onto them. And we all see that there's technology on there, right? Technology can be a huge stigma. There is unfortunately a huge stereotype where I admit of doing this when I was younger, of thinking my mom or grandma cannot figure this out. They're too old to figure out how to work a cell phone, right? When I'm looking at my cell phone today that had the update just 2 days ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how to work my phone all over again. Right? So, but there is this stigma from our younger generations that we have against the older generations, that the older generation is not open to technology, right? So, but something that we saw that was also beautiful in that SNL clip, even though these were actors dressed as older adults, these older adults were interested in using the technology. They are using it correctly, or sometimes incorrectly even. So the fact that people are thinking older adults don't know or don't want to use technology, right? And so, are there any other stigmas that anybody else would like to share what they maybe have experienced as professionals working with the older adult community?
Well,
Feel free.
Sage, this is Connie King. I'm sorry, do we raise our hand?
Oh,
How do you want
oh,
us to
I was
do
just
this?
gonna say it. So go ahead and continue talking. You're fine. I can't see the
Okay.
raised hands or anything.
Okay, so I work in an active adult community out in Indio, and residents, they purchase their home. We have two golf courses, two clubhouses, so on and so forth. And we notice in regards to technology, we just started a tech day. So residents can come in, they can bring, whatever device, their mobile device, their phone, so on and so forth. But where we saw the spike in the technology was during COVID, because this was the only way that they were able to communicate with their families, their grandchildren, so on and so forth. So they did end up having to learn how to use their phones to send pictures or do Zooms or have different ways that they were able to contact, which was surprising. We had that mentality also prior to COVID, that hey, you can't give them too much because they don't know how to use this. But I mean, they did surprise us during COVID and um, was able to, figure out some things on their own. We had 353 people attend an AI presentation because they wanted to know now the next advancement portion of it. So
Mm-hmm.
it varies, I think.
Right, right. It does truly vary. And because it does vary, that's where people often forget that it does vary. Not every older adult is the same. Not every older adult is going to have the lack of knowledge of not using technology. Because you brought up a wonderful point. COVID did change our culture in the United States, definitely, especially with access to care and that sort of thing. And that's something that I'll be talking about in just a little bit. And yeah, but I do love the point that you made, Rabia, was that stigma is like a point of weakness in many individuals' beliefs. Yes, I definitely agree with that. And Dakota, also love your comment about the resistance to using devices associated with aging due to ageism. And that's something I'll actually be talking about too. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much so far for the engagement that I'm getting from this meeting. Love it. So the other common challenge is loss that our older adults do happen to experience. When we think of loss, we think of the death of a physical person, right? That is one form of loss, losing a spouse, partner, or a friend. But something else that individuals can experience loss from other individuals is actually the loss of the relationship itself, right? Maybe their friends happen to move away, or they move away from their friends. They become distant. So that's also another form of loss rather than the physical death of somebody. Also, uh, employment can be a huge loss to some individuals, right? So for individuals who are just transitioning from working to retirement, they may experience a loss of identity. I don't know who I am. Uh, because I've been a teacher for 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know what it's like to not be a teacher anymore. And um, and sometimes they're just having a really hard time from that transition from employment to retirement. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it goes from employment to the loss of a job where it wasn't that nice transition. So dealing with that difficult transition can be a loss itself too. Another form of loss is living independently, right? Something that we all saw in the pandemic too is a lot of families moving in together for financial reasons and for health reasons. With some individuals, they move in with other family members, maybe a friend. It's because they aren't uncomfortable living by themselves, maybe due to their health, maybe just not wanting to live alone, but living independently is sometimes a major loss for those individuals, where it's not just about an older adult moving into a skilled nursing facility or assisted living, where sometimes it's just moving out of their home into another person's home. And more importantly, changes in health, right? When individuals are mourning the loss of what their health used to be, as their health does change quite a bit. And I'm just looking at in chat as well, and loss of bodily autonomy, function, and body grief. Yes, Dakota, I think you saw my presentation before you actually came to this meeting because you know exactly what I'm talking about next. So because chronic illnesses or changes with our bodies are that's also another form of loss. When we think of physical conditions, right? When we think of, okay, well, when arthritis gets so bad that we maybe need a cane or a walker, there sometimes is that resistance as that was mentioning in chat too. But there's also other physical conditions too that can create emotional distress. For example, if somebody is losing their vision, they may lose the loss of being able to drive independently, right? Which can increase some anxiety or depression, which ultimately leads to isolation. But there's other physical conditions that can develop with older adults, but can develop really at any age, are motor and neurological diagnosis. You know, for example, like Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, ALS, autoimmune diseases that are big challenges on day-to-day life. Right? And because this is something that they are unable to control, along with the with our body's natural aging, this is sometimes very, very hard to recognize. And more importantly, there's some autoimmune diseases too, where individuals may actually have some very good days. Like for example, I will disclose that I have fibromyalgia, and there are some days where I have a very, very good day. There's some days where I'm just better off being in bed, right? Even though I am not considered an older adult yet, but somebody who is an older adult with a similar autoimmune disease, that can definitely be challenging, especially when they're maybe dependent on having to get their own meal, where they want to socialize with other people, right?
Sage, can
Mhm.
I ask a quick question in
Yes.
regards to the common challenges in chronic illness? And excuse me for asking a lot of questions. I've always in the past missed the date or missed the Zoom meetings or whatever, so I have 1,000 different questions, but I won't take up any more time. Things like the blue zone and the brain health, are those things that are becoming more popular in terms of the aging population when they're talking about, are you familiar with the blue zone?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay,
Yes, I
so
am.
are they incorporating any of that, or are we starting to see, seniors being more receptive to those type of philosophies or lifestyle changes? Um, um, do you see that in your practice?
So something that I definitely do see is the fact that we are talking about this more. So I am starting to see seniors becoming a little bit more open. There's still some resistance, you know, for many other reasons. But I mean, we'll be talking about resources in a little bit, but for example, if we're talking about the Blue Zone, specifically Loma Linda, where it's a great little community, and where religious belief is actually the number one reason for promotion in healthier lifestyles, because of the Seventh Day Adventist belief. So But I know that Riverside County is also trying to make the county another blue zone area. So trying to increase not only better physical health for those that are aging, but also the behavioral health as well. And it looks like Dakota actually put in the link for the Blue Zones website, so feel free to check that out. So that way you can get more information on that too.
Yeah, we have it here in my community. I was just wondering.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. And but yes, so I think it's gonna be a slow change, but am I starting to see a change? Yes, it's just a little slow, right? And but going back to the chronic illnesses as some of the common challenges, so sometimes we see, changes in organ function. I mentioned that, there's changes in eyesight, right? And but there's also other diagnoses that can um lead to isolation, such as incontinence, right? So somebody who's not able to hold their bladder because their brain does not send the appropriate signals down, right? And where they don't want to have an accident in public, or maybe they're experiencing shame of having to wear an adult diaper or having to utilize a catheter. So there's a lot of stigma with that too. But also, some other changes in organ function is hearing and vision loss, right? So something that is very, very common is as we age, our hearing changes, our vision changes, and when these changes are happening, because they can be slow and gradual, we don't necessarily realize that it's happening unless if other people have pointed it out to us. Did anybody know here that sometimes that hearing and vision loss can also be misdiagnosed as dementia? Because if we think about it, if somebody is trying to fill out a paper and they're not able to visually see what's on the paper, they're having a hard time filling it out. They can't see the question. They don't know what they're putting down. A medical professional or a social service practitioner may just assume, okay, they may have some cognitive issues because they're not able to fill out this form, right? So this is a chronic illness that does tie into stigma. It's the same thing with hearing loss as well. Um, when we're not able to hear things, especially when we come from the hearing world, we're not able to hear the right interaction. We're not comfortable with questions being repeated, and where we just want to pretend like everything is fine. And so when the changes in vision and hearing can lead to increased depression. It can do that. Okay, and I am just seeing the chat just popping up quite a bit. And so yes, hearing loss can cause a lack of social interaction, which can lead to depression. Yes, yes, because it comes from that embarrassment, right? And Dakota put in the average wait time between being diagnosed with hearing loss and getting hearing aids is 7 years. So that is a long time. So that is definitely a huge aspect of the way that the brain functions, which is what Dakota does mean by auditory nerve atrophy, which means that if we don't use it, we lose it. That common phrase that we often hear, that's what she is referring to. And yes, Connie, UTI can also be a misdiagnosis, right? Especially if it's untreated, where it can be posed as delirium or dementia, especially with individuals that have ongoing UTIs. And so if you want more information on how UTIs can definitely affect the cognition, you're more than welcome to reach out to and then Caregiver Resource Center or even Alzheimer's Association to gain more of this information because it definitely is prominent in the older adult communities.
I wanted to add also
Yes.
that poor medication management, so combining medications that shouldn't be combined, or taking medication without food when it's supposed to be taken with food, or any kind of medication errors can lead to symptoms that look like dementia too.
Right, exactly. So where there can be so many things that could be misdiagnosed as dementia, and where, as you said, medication mismanagement or some other things that need to be treated differently, right? But sometimes if it's not diagnosed with dementia, sometimes they're just labeled, oh, it's just depression, you're just sad, right? Because sometimes that I often hear working with the older adult communities is that, oh, yeah, they have memory loss. No, no, they're experiencing sadness because they're lonely, they're isolated. And so it's definitely something for the medical community to continue to work on their education with dementia. Okay. And the last common challenge that I'll be going over today is isolation. Right, as I mentioned before,
Diego,
after what? Okay, maybe somebody accidentally unmuted themselves. So, um, So isolation can be common after retirement, as I mentioned earlier. There's also changes in mobility, such as using a walker, a cane. Maybe they're not able to move at all. Friends moving away. More importantly, access to transportation, right? If they're unable to drive, are they able to are they able to financially afford something like Uber? Is their bus stop at something in a decent walking range? Or is it wheelchair accessible? Is it cane accessible? Right? Is it accessible for those with visual impairments? Right? And also access to technology, right? Oftentimes, we have heard that seniors that are of higher risk of experiencing depression and anxiety are for those that do not have access to technology, right? Which is why we saw a huge boom when COVID did come up, because telehealth became more popular. These individuals actually got access to therapy because of phone services being more available. Zoom, if the individual was open to using Zoom, or just alternative means. Okay, so how can we support behavioral health? So the most important thing is something that we're actually doing right now. We're having open discussions about behavioral health, right? And when we're working with our patients or our clients, what's really important is to make sure that we do not use the clinical jargon when describing behavioral health. We want to use their words. So what do I mean by this? If they're saying, I feel really sad and really lonely and agitated, well, that sounds like depression as a clinician. But we're not going to say, okay, well, what do you do about your depression? Instead, focusing on asking, okay, well, when you're feeling sad, can you share with me what that looks like in a little bit more detail? Right? Use their words so that way we're on the same level as the client. Something else that we will encourage to do is promoting social connection, right? Whether it could be through community centers, um, senior clubs, maybe volunteering. There's even wonderful agencies like Innovate, who's a PACE program for the Inland Empire area that actually provides seniors lunch 5 days a week. So it's really nice, even though it's a low cost lunch, but it's a really nice way for seniors to socialize. Right? But if individuals are unable to socialize outside of their home, something that can be a really good resource that they can use over their phone is calling the friendship line. If you haven't heard about the friendship line before, the friendship line is a really good older adult crisis resource center. But not only are they used for individuals that are experiencing crisis, such as suicide ideation, but this line is also really good for individuals that are just wanting companionship, somebody to talk to for about 20 to 30 minutes. Maybe also calling just for resources in their area. This is a really good resource that I would encourage for individuals to provide to the older adult communities.
Can I say something on that?
Yes.
I'm a senior resource specialist for 211, and the resources, as we all know, are very, very slim. So I am always giving out the friendship line and NAMI and every single day to, to let them know there is someone you can talk to. There's somebody that does care and understand so that they can feel that they're not alone. So I thank God for the friendship line. I really do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that it's also available 24/7, and especially when maybe somebody just is feeling really lonely at the early hours or in the late hours at night, it's a very, very good resource to utilize, right? But you notice on here that I have on here, don't leave out individuals with dementia-related diagnosis, right? So when individuals who are experiencing dementia, maybe they're saying, "Oh no, they can't do things independently. They have to be supervised," and in some cases, it's it's definitely a great resource. And guess what? I'm seeing that the friendship line is being requested in chat. So something I did forget at the beginning of this presentation, I will be providing a resource list to also be provided with the slide deck. That will be emailed after this presentation. That includes the friendship line along with some other resources that I'll be providing. Okay, so, but if Joyce, if you're typing that in chat anyway, then thank you for doing that. And, but yeah, so especially if you're working with family members that are caring for somebody with dementia, is that you would actually want to encourage them to engage the I we Inland Caregiver Resource Center calls these individuals care receivers. So the individuals receiving care. So we would encourage the family members to involve the care receivers in the activity, right? Maybe it's to help them prepare dinner, right? They don't need to necessarily do it correctly, but as long as they're doing it safely, then that's what's most important. For example, maybe they're mixing the bowl that's filled with flour and salt, where they're just mixing it, and that's all they have them do. Because this helps them feel engaged and it helps them lessen their feelings of depression. Because guess what? Individuals with dementia also do have feelings too, where they're able to experience anxiety, depression, and also trauma in ways that they're not able to verbalize as well as they used to. And but also encouraging physical activity. This can definitely be a hard one, especially for individuals that have um some mobility limitations, right? But even doing something as walking around the home if they're able to, maybe arm exercises if they're not able to walk around safely, right? Doing those physical activities can get the body moving, and there's plenty of studies that that are provided. For example, IHP has tons and tons of classes available on these exercises that are available for people of all ages. And and I'll be going over the IHP wellness centers in just a little bit, but could these individuals with dementia go to these activities, especially if it's for Zumba or chair exercise, chair yoga? Absolutely. Right? So what else can we do to support behavioral health in older adults? We can also increase our knowledge and access to behavioral wellness services, including therapy and support groups, right? So for the options for Inland Caregiver Resource Center, we actually have caregiver support groups, but we also have three really good behavioral health and wellness programs. One of them is the short-term counseling that is for caregivers, which is 6 to 8 sessions that focuses just on their caregiving situation. The other two programs are those that are exclusively over the age of 60, One of them is called Pearls, which is a program to enrich active and rewarding lives for seniors, where it's a great program to help problem solve with these individuals to help understand, okay, what's the identified concern that you're having? What can you do to help eliminate this problem? Right, so it's a really great program, especially for those that are in the very beginning stages of depression or anxiety. Then we also have Thrive, right? And which is a cognitive behavioral therapy program, which is a talk therapy program that is from 6 to 20 sessions. So I mentioned Pearls and Thrive. These programs are for individuals over the age of 60 for Riverside and San Bernardino County for what Inland Caregiver Resource Center is able to provide, right? So they just have to be over the age of 60. And there are some other requirements, but I would encourage for you to send the clients over to us so that way we can also make sure they get the appropriate services. Because if Pearls or Thrive doesn't work out for them, then it's also our responsibility to connect them with another resource that would be appropriate. For example, like in San Bernardino County, referring them back to AgeWise, which is through DOS and behavioral health. It's a great, great program for long-term behavioral health services, right?
Sage, can I ask you a question? How
Yes.
does a person's insurance, whether or not if you have Blue Shield, Aetna, Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever, what do you know offhand would be the requirements for someone to access these different programs? Do they have to be like Medicare patients or Medicaid, or do a lot of the insurance companies
Are you talking
cover
about
these?
how are you talking about Pearls and Thrive specifically?
Yeah, or just like when you were saying like that they can get different behavior or health benefits and come and see the counselors and so on and so forth. Is that something that's paid through insurance, or are these free programs for the
So
aging population?
yeah, so the ones that I mentioned through Inland Caregiver Resource Center, they're free. They're not insurance based. So for age-wise, it is for individuals that are Medi-Cal. And in regard to for those that are on Medicare or have other private insurance plans, it unfortunately depends on the type of insurance plan that they do have. That limits their access to behavioral health services. And so that's a very, very challenging question to answer, if I'm frankly honest. Yeah, but a very good question. So thank you for asking. And but yeah, so not only therapy, but also understanding what support groups are also available because sometimes individuals may not benefit not just from individual therapy, but also working in a support group setting or group therapy. There's also that. Then lastly, advocating for age-inclusive healthcare policies. So I think the question that was asked before is a perfect example. How can seniors access this when we don't have something that provides, a clear-cut answer on how can we easily access behavioral healthcare services for not only just seniors, but for all age groups. But especially with the older adult population just continuing to grow, making sure that we're attending meetings like like this ICA meeting or going to legislation, understanding what's happening with the Medicare, Medi-Cal changes that are going on, right? There's a lot of changes going on. And so continuing to advocate. So that's how we can also support behavioral health. So for the role of the community, so the most important thing is creating a supportive environment with accessibility, right? And because if we say, oh, you have to come into our Colton office to fill out a form, that may actually limit the accessibility for some individuals. There's a lot of options where some agencies are able to say, hey, you can apply for services through phone, applying on our website, or some other options too. Maybe doing some outreach in the community where individuals can actually apply through services while they're in the community, scheduling an appointment, that sort of thing. But who plays the biggest role in this community? Individuals who are involved in the aging population, like their families, their caregivers, and other community members do play a incredibly vital role, right? And as Carmen mentioned earlier, survey was sent out because we want that feedback. Also, listen to the community feedback. It is incredibly important. So incredibly important. And also having an understanding of some other programs that are not just inclusive for older adults, but other age groups too, like intergenerational programs that can help boost self-worth and reduce the older adults' loneliness, right? So last calendar year, San Bernardino County Department of Behavioral Health and Public Health departments were able to do this wonderful program of intergenerational programs where Inland Caregiver Resource Center was also able to help with having classes and events of inviting older adults and their family members to engage in these activities, right? Where not only are they learning about aging, but also just learning how to engage and socialize with one another too. And um, this the intergenerational program through San Bernardino Department of Behavioral Health Service was actually so successful last year where they are actually able to do it again in the future years too, where they have a lot of initiatives available on their website that I would encourage for you to look at when you get the fact sheet, or not the fact sheet, the resource sheet when we're done with this presentation. And there's also local initiatives, right, which can include workshops, check-in programs, and other inclusive events, like how I mentioned Innovation's senior luncheon that is Monday through Friday, right? And I also mentioned the Friendship Line earlier. They also do a check-in programs. United Way also does check-in programs. There's so many things that do check-in programs that we just don't know about, but will be available on the resource sheet. Okay, and so again, what can we do? Let's try to support and local senior resources, right? Whether it's county, nonprofit, private, or some other things to help understand our senior resources. Because as it was said earlier, it's very, very slim. So, and also some other advocacy groups. More importantly, collaborate with local community meetings, just like this meeting today, right? But I've also have listed here some other meetings that can be beneficial to attend. San Bernardino Adult Protective Services multiple disciplinary team meetings that are available once a month for each region. It turns out to be it's a great meeting. Riverside also has something very similar where you get to collaborate with other professionals. Both Riverside and San Bernardino behavioral health departments have subcommittees that focuses on the different areas of diversity, but also they both have older adult meetings. There's also the Senior Affair Commission through San Bernardino County SAC meeting, which I would encourage for you to also attend because it has lots of great legislative updates. And more importantly, visit and connect with seniors, right? Because hearing their stories can definitely be incredibly helpful. It really can be, so that way we can understand what our community needs directly. So let's go ahead and wrap this up because I can see that I'm almost out of time. So we want to make sure that we're honoring the wisdom and supporting wellness in our older adults because aging is a journey we all share. We can't get away from it no matter how hard we try. Aging is an honor. So behavioral health and wellness support is essential for a thriving and inclusive community, which is why we're all here today. And as I mentioned, the resource list will be included in the email for the presentation and recording that will be available today. So, okay, so I think that wrapped it up. So do I give it back to Ben or Carmen?
I'll take
Can I
it.
can I can I ask one quick question, Ben?
Yes.
Good seeing you again.
Good to
I
see you.
signed up for that Inland Empire Master Plan, and I know that they were saying something around June. Is that still in the works, or is that something that's part of what we're discussing now? Is that something separate?
I
Because I
was
haven't
just going
heard
to
anything
touch on
else
that.
about it.
Absolutely. I was just going to touch on that. So thank you,
Oh,
Sage.
sorry.
First of all, no worries. Thank you for your question. Sage, thank you so much for a great presentation. You touched on so many things that are about who we are as a coalition. While you were sharing your call to action, it reminded me, call to action, that's what a coalition is. A coalition, I looked up the definition, is an alliance for combined action. Action, keyword. Everything we've been doing up until now, the presentations, the work on the MPA has been so all of us as a coalition can act on and really make a difference, really make a change. So please, I implore you as a coalition member, an active and engaged coalition member, by the way, very engaged in the questions. I appreciate all of your questions and comments. Thank you so much for being engaged. I implore you to please reply to the emails that we've sent, a survey. We were asking for some demographics, some questions, but most importantly, be here for the June meeting where we're going to lay out all the work that we've done up until now and then talk about the work that is going to happen after, right? Because this is just the beginning. We're just getting started, but very exciting meeting. We've got some great presenters. We're lining up some videos. We're inviting elected officials. It's going to be phenomenal. Please join us on that day to learn more. If you're not a member of the coalition by some chance, maybe you got this forwarded to you, this meeting, make sure you join as a coalition member because that's how you stay updated to all the meetings, events, and everything that's going on. Make sure you go to the website and register if you have not registered as a member. If you're in this meeting, does not necessarily mean you're a member. So please take care of that. We'll put that in the chat. But we are out of time. Thank you so much again to our presenters. Thank you to all the coalition members and everybody who turned out today. Thank you for all that you do to ensure that caregivers, older adults, people with disabilities can age well in the Inland Empire. We will see you in June. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care, everyone.